Steven Crowder continues to be the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone, mostly the internet. And he had a very, very hot take on one of the provisions put in the stimulus COVID relief bill, which specifically helps out Black farmers, which have long been ignored and long been sidelined in our country's history. And of course, Crowder and company had this response to that piece of legislation.
I don't know where you find this many farmers of color. But they did, and 5.2 billion are being allocated exclusively for colored farmers. Farmers of color, roll the tape.
As long ago as 1965, the U.S. Department of Agriculture discriminated against Black farmers, but little was done to address the problem.
100 years ago?
Yeah, most happy about the new policy, these people. So, yeah. I'm gonna buy a plow, man.
I'm gonna plant that corn.
Go get a John Deere. Barack Obama, mother, I'm the president. I'm plowing that head.
You.
I thought the last thing they would want to do is be farmers. Wasn't that a big problem for hundreds of years?
Yeah.
Isn't that why Arsenio Hall called himself the urban man's Johnny Carson?
I think so.
Yeah.
So much racism to unpack there. Wow, John?
Yeah, I love their, they obviously don't think that this is a big, to give you an idea of how genuinely intellectually topic they are. The first guy says, how many farmers of color could there be? I haven't met one, so how could they possibly exist? And then when they actually go to Democracy Now! To talk about the fact that, for well more than a century, there's been a variety of government policies that have in fact been discriminatory in both their intent and their actual implementation. They recoil against it. 100 years. Why should I care if something's been going on for a century? So in terms of the substance, they have clearly no interest in any substance about literally anything, particularly this. But when it comes to the comedy, though, you have to answer for this, Francesca, because you're a comedian, and so are they. You're the same thing. What is wrong with you comedians and your quips and your jokes? Defend him.
No. F that guy forever and ever and ever and ever. It's not funny. Here's the thing, get up on stage and do that. You know what I mean? See if you'll get laughs besides other people's incredibly uncomfortable chuckling as a few people just leave your audience. The worst part about that to me is that everyone's piling on this incredibly ignorant point, right? It's like, oh, let's just keep going, and we've created a whole studio in homage to our horrible racist comedy. That's what this is, but it's just freedom of speech, Yeah, and so okay, well, let's break it down. One, how many Black farmers could there be? Yeah. The clip you're playing shows that not that many left because of historic discrimination. So that's number one. Two, an open racist comment about slavery, basically. Hey, wasn't that the problem, that they didn't actually want to farm? That's funny. Yeah, that's the thing with slavery. It was that they didn't want to farm, not that they were
that was the issue.
Working against their will and for free. In fact, remember the 40 acres and a mule promise? That was so that Black farmers could get started. That was quickly rescinded and was not made good on, and then unleashed a bunch of white terror in this country. I mean, look, it's history we should dig into. It's just amazing to me that just why pick this issue if you're not just trying to do a racist voice? If you're not trying to do a Black affectation and then make a bunch of racist jokes.
That's all it is.
That's the only point.
I mean, it's very sad. It's a group of guys that just want to be around other racists so they can say the racist things that they think for whatever reason are funny and not get punched in the face, as Steven Crowder notably was by a union guy at a protest. You should watch that video, it's pretty entertaining. It's actually a funnier video than anything that was said in that video, by the way. And you can loop it, you can watch it a whole bunch of times. So they've created this little room where they all agree about everything. There wasn't a single person in that room that was like, hey, wait, what if there was discrimination? Or, hey, just because we don't know any black farmers or Asian farmers or Hispanic farmers or, native farmers, maybe they still exist. There wasn't a single person that said any of that, because if there was a person in that room that had that sort of impulse, they would be shoved out of the room. They have self-selected a group of the exact same sort of morons. And you made an amazing point about that particular thing. Do that on a stage. Like, I'm not a stand-up, you are, you know what that's like. It's probably pretty difficult, right? And pretty scary. And he's found a way around it.
White guy's not doing that joke.
No, exactly. No, he doesn't want to, and he doesn't need to, because he's found a way to just broadcast to the internet and get enough, disparate racists that will like that. He couldn't actually do it like a real comedian would, but he can be really racist on the internet, and that's easy enough. So all of it is cowardice. Their social group is cowardice. The way they're monetizing it is cowardice. They want to pretend that they're comedians, but they won't actually really try to do it because they both don't have the chops and they don't have the bravery to even try.
Okay. For the actual context, since that is important, let's talk about it. So black farmers in America have lost more than 12 million acres of farmland over the past century, mostly since the 1950s, as a result of what agricultural experts and advocates for black farmers say is a combination of systemic racism, biased government policy, and social and business practices that have denied African Americans equitable access to markets. Discrimination started with the Homestead Acts, that offered mainly white settlers deeply subsidized land that was not even theirs to begin with. But then since then, the US Department of Agriculture offices charged with distributing loans have frequently been found to deny black farmers access to credit and ignore or delay loan applications, right? So whether or not you have experience in farming, but you definitely know what it is to try and get a loan for anything, right? Hopefully maybe a house one day. We understand the discriminatory practices involved in that. Well, same thing when it comes to working land and having a farm. So,
and all that information is available if they were curious. Unfortunately, what you just read there is more reading than they've collectively done since college, which they probably got in as legacies. Yeah, so they're not interested in actually learning anything, let alone knowing anything, having government policy be based on an actual accurate understanding of history. They're not interested in any of that, which would be fine. Not everybody who comments on politics has to know things. Some people are just funny. But if you're clearly not capable of doing that, shouldn't you be able to bring something? Understanding, curiosity, empathy, something? But they don't. They found some other way.
This is the problem with, I think, a lot of podcasts, generally. And look, I think to each their own on a lot of podcasts, right? Like their podcasts I don't listen to because it's a bunch of dudes and I really need a woman's voice somewhere in there. I mean, I don't watch shows sometimes because I'm like, too much men, also bad acting, or everyone's white and like, I want to see more diversity. Like you don't have to all like all things. I think that's number one. The problem with this kind of like behavior is like, look, if they're in the privacy of themselves in their own home, well, then that's their crappy racist friend group and they can say whatever they want. I'm serious about that. Like say whatever they want. I don't expect Steven Crowder to be a good person. The problem is when you make it public and expect to be congratulated or laughed at, right? Oh, you're so brave. You're so brave for making a joke that an 11-year-old would make, in a basement with his friend in the middle of playing video games, which is again, fine. I don't know. You can make a racist joke, I guess. I don't encourage it. But when you're 11, maybe you're learning and then you take some classes. You know what I'm saying? The problem is the podcast world creates this like fly on the wall type concept where, it feels like you're just hanging out with you and your other racist bros. Yeah. Except it's not. It is supposed to be disseminated. It is supposed to sort of take, cues and give cues for how it's okay for a grown ass man to behave.
Yeah.
So
can you imagine what they say when they're not recording?
Absolutely.
Oh my God. Yeah. And it's only gonna get worse from here because, I don't even know what that program is, but it is clear that what it's offering is racism. And they had a competitive advantage for a while, but now relatively more mainstream Republican shows are doing more and more explicit racism, that advantage is disappearing. Like they're gonna have to do something crazy to get people to watch them. So that's gonna be fun. Enjoy that, right-wing racists.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.